Hey there guys, and welcome to another Factorio Base Tour. I'm Exterminator, and thank you for joining me. And today we are going over a base submitted by AlwayBlue's. And this one is, I think, a really good example of a kind of first time late game base. So, this isn't like the biggest base ever. This isn't, it's not modded. It's not it doesn't have anything that's just like super, super, super unique or crazy. But it is still a very cool base. And why I wanted to review this, they came to me and asked, and normally I do like to review bases that are, or base tour rather, bases that are, unique in some way or just like over the top huge, or where they've done something just, very different. But after looking at this, I think it's really pretty cool, especially for this being like one of their first factories. So they've launched a little over 50 rockets, which we'll look at in a minute here or two. And this is they say this is their first run, kind of. I think this is maybe like the first late game run they've done, but they're still, they're not a super seasoned player. I believe they have about 150 hours in this save specifically. And there's just kind of some cool stuff I want to look at, just kind of showcase, especially if you're newer to the game, that this is made by someone who doesn't necessarily have like 5,000 hours in the game, and it's still really quite impressive. So it is completely vanilla. We are currently on 1.1 is the version I'm doing this on, and if we zoom out, it is actually a pretty huge map. You can see the artillery exploration that's happened here. Biters are on. By the looks of these defenses, I would say biters that they're not on peaceful, that they will actually attack. I'm not sure if they have expansion on or not. They certainly have enough artillery to keep that back. You can see just scattered with lasers here. Kind of an interesting setup here with the unloading for this is they kind of just have this pull directly out the rail rather than have the rail like pull into the outpost and feed it in. It's very simple, but also very effective. It certainly works. And they have these, throughout the area. Some oil outposts here, kind of a defensive line here. They've walled this off, although no turrets. And we can see the rails really actually sprawl a decent distance, kind of all over the place. And the rails are something to talk about. There's not really any quote-unquote proper junctions on this map. As you can see, things kind of just crisscross and merge here and there. Now, they did signal. They seem to have signaled pretty decently, for sure, and potentially, yeah. So basically just very simple rail signals before crossings, or chain signals, sorry, before crossings, normal signals after it. And it, it does work. And somewhere around here, I did see some just like kind of general, or was that? Over here, just kind of some general joining rails. There are no signals here, so I'm actually kind of surprised there's been no crashes. All this looks like potentially just a big loop that maybe just the artillery supply train goes to. Some outposts and such here and there. Just vanilla, completely vanilla. There's no mods. Doesn't really look like they use any commands of any sort. Now let's actually look at production. With being in 1.1, we actually have the awesome feature in vanilla of being able to turn this on and easily see and find where things are made, rather than kind of just, aimlessly wandering around trying to find stuff. So over here, we have our oil production, which we will look at closer. I'm going to kind of just look in the map initially. We have our iron up here, some iron at least, some copper. This looks like a circuit area, which is pretty awesome. I would imagine this is a nuclear. We'll look there shortly. Zooming back in, we have basically all this is kind of just, oil, some oil products here and here, all in this area, combined with some belt production, interestingly, and some robo frames. This looks like kind of stuff for yellow science, which is made right here. Definitely a lot of crisscrossing of belts. They did use a bus system, it looks like, to some degree, but not like having this all kind of just in this huge side area is pretty interesting to me. Okay, so that's concrete. I wasn't quite sure what that big yellow blob was. More copper down here, copper cable as well. They are being attacked. Yeah, so biters are definitely not on peaceful. Decent amount of steel production here, some iron here, a little bit of grenades here, bunch of uranium processing, which we're standing next to, some brick walls, green science, blue science, purple science, red science down here, military science here, and the labs are somewhere. Not, we'll find the labs. So if we go back into this view, we have this interesting, pretty straightforward sorting thing for the Corex process. We have these filter inserters that take this off here. It kind of just cycles through here, I suppose, in a way, and just builds up. It looks like so then this just picks back up how much it needs, essentially. And this is kind of just moving in and out at the same speed. And then this guy outputs here, which this picks up and puts back on, kind of basically the same concept. So it's actually quite interesting. They have this going, decent size of it, honestly. Some actual, then just processing of uranium here as we ride along the belts. A little bit of stone production, wall production here. This looks like kind of just a general rail and wall facility builder. Large storage area here. Quite a bit of uranium, actually 84,000 of the what is this, 232? 235. Sorry. And then that looks like that's kind of stored here. We have, of course, belt production, decent amount of it, like 4 machines making inserters and belts for the green science. Now, one thing we will notice is that they're actually different tiered machines, which is really funny. 3 of these are blue, while one's normal, and then these 4 are all normal, even though this needs them at the same pace. So that's kind of interesting. Some military science here, of course. Actually, very small amounts of science in the grand scheme of things. Only 6 assemblers for this, and only 10 assemblers for this, so kind of just a fairly basic rate of production. And by the looks of it, there's not really necessarily more elsewhere. There is some production of other things outside the base, which we'll look at shortly. And then we kind of just move along the bus, which, kind of just has stuff coming in and out, going different directions. You'll see the iron is actually, like, going a different direction here. It's actually coming from the bottom. And the steel's kind of winding around up through the bus. They are using electric furnaces here. And then just kind of normal smelting. If we look at the power while we're here, I bring that up because we have electric furnaces using about 0.5 gigawatt, all from nuclear power. Most of that coming from the assemblers and furnaces, and then actually a lot of lasers, 3,200 lasers. So that's over there. Let's head up this way. Big swath of radar over there. Blue science, kind of just in this little own cell of its own. It looks like maybe this map was, like, they kind of revamped things, because there's just this huge amount of, like, open area with things kind of scattered everywhere. I don't know if this is the way they built, and this is not a criticism at all, it's just an observation. It almost looks like they built something one way, and then that they've, like, cleared out a bunch of stuff that maybe used to be in here. Or maybe they just built this way. I've actually never really seen something built quite like this, like, intentionally, from the start, where it's just, like, this little grouping of science production, like, here, and then kind of just really, really, really spread out like this, with the products made, like, elsewhere, or the ingredients, rather. So I find this actually really interesting. Like I said, even though this is not, like, the biggest base ever, there's some really kind of unique, at least to me, things here. Bunch more copper smelting, of course, for a ton of circuits. Now, they are belting copper cable. That is not great, but in this case, it works. Definitely not recommended, purely for anyone who doesn't know, because the copper cable, like, density-wise, is not good to put it on a belt, because you're getting 2 cable for every copper. So transporting cable on a belt is very inefficient compared to just transporting the copper on the belt and then directly inserting the cable into the machines. Like, you can't get as high of a throughput, right? Because, this needs 3 cable, and opposed to just direct inserting. You can really only fit so much on the belt, even a blue belt. So we kind of head over this way. It looks like they have some nuclear power here, just kind of wherever they could put it by this lake. It does, even though it doesn't look like a specific design necessarily, it actually kind of looks interesting to me here. It's kind of like half circle around the lake. Which, I mean, it is a consistent design in some way, just like the general boiler, or heat exchanger and turbine design here and layout. So that's part of it. I think there was more up top, which we can look at. Beaconing the crap out of this oil, I definitely commend that. That is definitely a good thing you can be doing on your oil wells, since oil never runs out. Also, I really like the look of these things at night. The beacons are kind of obviously glowing and sending electricity up, and then the modules are kind of glowing as well. It looks really nice. More red circuit production here, which is coming over to module production, of course, then coming over here for low-density structures and the rocket. Now, sadly, in 1.1, they got rid of the statistics for how many rockets you've launched. I don't know why they got rid of this, but they did. So basically what we have to do is, if we look over in production, which we want to look at anyway, we can kind of tell by just looking at the amount of satellites consumed. So they consumed 59 satellites. We can assume that means they've launched at least 59 rockets, maybe more, maybe some without satellites, but pretty much as a minimum starting point, this much. Now, if we look at the production and consumption all time, it's decent, like 20 mil, iron made all time, 17 million copper, 6.8 million circuits. If we look at science, maybe look at consumed science, looks like about 100,000 of the main three, the first three, not counting military, and then, lesser of the high-tech and the purple, because there's just not that many researchers that use purple, but decent amount. And looking actually at just general production, it looks to be like they do maybe, it was going faster at one point, but maybe like 1.5 science a second, 70, 80 science a minute. So, the save does have 150 hours, though, so that's how they've gotten fairly far along with that low amount of science. A lot of production here. So much sulfuric acid production. This is so much. They should be set on that. Tons of explosives, which is understandable for all the artillery shells and stuff. They have a lot of artillery shells in here. They have 720. Should be set for a while. Coming over to oil production. Again, interesting layout where they just have like short little rows and then multiple rows of it, opposed to like how I build. And I'm not saying like one way is right or one way is wrong, just again an observation. Plus how I build, I would just put like 20 of these in a row. So it's just kind of interesting to see the difference in play styles. Just kind of, another build here, some tanks, general processing of the rocket fuel, which they have beaconed because it is slow. Now, one thing I would say is putting productivity modules in here would potentially be better. In fact, I'm almost positive it would be, especially when you're speed beaconing it. Probably don't need to speed module it as well. Low density production here, again, kind of split into two different sectors, which is interesting. Definitely could have made this a long one. Again, not necessarily making it long is better, just interesting that they did this. Of course, robot frame production, yellow science here. So these, let's follow the robots. They're put in a chest, and then they're actually transported with robots over to here. So this is very much a hybrid bot base, because they're brought by bots and then actually belted into the labs, which is kind of funny. They are using the pass-through technique, which is quite useful in this situation. It does kind of get eliminated if you go super long with it, but they're like nowhere near that point. So definitely good here. It looks like they have more than enough science, so they could either add more labs or like speed modular labs. Looks like they didn't max out their lab research, speed research. In terms of actual research, their on-mining productivity 6 is what they're doing currently. And then robot speed 9 is what they did, since this one's 10, which would have been 8,000 science. And then more nuclear over here. This looks, I was going to say, a little more of a standardized build. Not quite, but more nuclear here, and that looks to be all their power production potentially. This one, and then the one down here. I don't really see anything else that would look like nuclear. A lot of outposts, though. Considering how, like, modest the base is, there's a ton of outposts. So this is definitely, I would say, maybe default settings in terms of resources. Because they just play for so long and stuff that overall they've made a lot of stuff and need a lot of outposts. So you can kind of see how things have developed as they've gone. Like the rails, we actually have a little bit of a backup here. So this would definitely be a good use of a stacker. Having a stacker here for sure instead of just backing up on the main line. That would be really good. All kinds of rail systems. This definitely looks like how I used to build my rails, or when I'm really, really lazy, how I still build them. No, when I get later in the game, I build proper rails, but um, yeah, kind of a rail here that just dead ends, which I think is funny. Of course, it's just an artillery supply rail, but still, uh, and, lasered the heck out of this stuff. Definitely no problem with that. Like, definitely want to make sure that's protected. This is actually being attacked fairly heavily. It looks like either no power or just no radar out here. In terms of like their loading and stuff, it's fairly straightforward. 6 chests on each side, so very quick loading. It looks like just 111 trains um, coming in and out. It looks to be like that's kind of what they're doing everywhere. I don't really see. Some of these are actually just 1-1s, and then some like this one are double-headed. So kind of a mix of train systems here, but very much segregated type of rails for some stuff. Where it's not like one like gigantic network necessarily. I mean, it kind of is where things crisscross, but there's not like a main line, I suppose. But yeah, you can see how like this started. Like this is their main wall, and then they've like expanded out from that with outposts as well as artillery. So there is the issue, of course, something like this where the biters can end up attacking the things between the defensive outposts. But in terms of the actual like defense here, I really like this strategy of having these little like pillboxes or bunkers of stuff, and then some wall. Now these can't quite. I mean, they cover each other, I guess, to some degree. I would maybe put these a little closer, put lasers here, as they've done in some cases. But yeah, this is really good. I like this strategy a lot. Oh, there's more nuclear up here. I found some. That definitely seems about to be it. Some uranium up here, some copper, just span lasers around it. And, oh yeah, some circuit protection. We didn't quite look at this. Oh, this looks so good at night. So general, just basic smelting here with electric furnaces. Looks very much like they just kind of modeled and beaconed things as they needed it, which is very much what I did for a very long time after I started playing. And still do, I guess, on occasion. But like this is not beacon, but then some other stuff is. Things kind of moduled here and there. Again, belting the cable, that's definitely something I would not recommend. And then, just pretty standard here. Like I said, not like the most mind-blowing thing ever, but I think this is actually, I really wanted to tour this because I think it's just really interesting. I think it's interesting to see how a newer player builds like a late game base, and I think maybe there's some lessons to be learned as well as just some things like lessons to be learned in terms of what can be improved on, and then also just things that are actually done pretty well, like the defenses and stuff that can be taken away from this. I think it's just really interesting. Again, none of these are really huge criticisms, just kind of contrast to how I personally play and what I've seen elsewhere and stuff, and everyone builds different, and I think this is a really good example of that. Like I said, I've never really seen built quite like this off of a bus, personally. I don't know, there's just something about it that seems different. Again, not wrong, but just different than what I'm used to, which makes it interesting. And yeah, I just thought it would be really cool to kind of tour this, show a late game modest size base for a pretty new player. Is something I haven't really done before in this series. And I think it would be laughing at this right here. I think it would be pretty cool to look at. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, not like a ton more to look at here. I hope you did enjoy though, and kind of just have maybe a different perspective of things, or if you're new to the game as well, maybe learn some things, or can compare and contrast it to your bases. I think it's really cool. It goes to show that, as a new player, as a pretty new player, you can definitely get to late game, 50, 60 rockets launched, and just, kind of expand out as you go. I think the only thing we didn't look at was this, which is pretty basic. Again, the circuit production, belting cable, and then red circuit. I think it's fine to belt cable for red circuits due to the ratio that, like, a red circuit doesn't need 4, but it's a 6-second craft opposed to the 3 every half a second. So kind of a big difference here. Um, but yeah, I think this is really cool because aside from the different build style, again, like I said, aside from different build style, like I've never really quite built like this specifically. Aside from that, this is very reminiscent of the type of bases I built, and it's kind of nostalgic, and maybe that's the case for some of you guys. Like looking back, it's just like some of this stuff is like, hey, I used to do that. I did that for a long time, and I used to play like this, and in some cases, I do still play like that in some ways. So I think it's just really intriguing to look at. I have several other. I think I have 3 base tours, 3 more. One of them after this one coming up, so keep an eye out. There are some in the queue. One of them is the converted rocket defense per minute Dave McW base from the Friday Fact or alternate Friday Facts that we covered a little bit ago. That's one. And then the other 2 are submitted. One of them's doesn't sound huge, but it sounds really interesting and unique. And then another one sounds mind blowing. Like the one I did a while back where they launched like a million plus 2 million rockets, had an insane amount of hours. It sounds kind of like that caliber. It sounds really insane. So I'm super excited to review or to base tour that one. So yeah, there are more coming up. I like to space them out. I purposely don't do them super often because I kind of want to let people view it and kind of digest things and then not just zip through all of them and then not have any more to do for months and months and months. So I like to space them out every few weeks. But yeah, there you go, guys. That is Always Blue's base. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you, Always Blue, for submitting this to me. I really did enjoy taking a look through it. It gave me some nice nostalgia and kind of a look back to how I would play and stuff, and just really interesting to see the differences and similarities and how far you've came, especially for being either your first run or one of your first runs, maybe your first time into the late game. So really cool. Thank you everyone for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you did enjoy. If you did, a like is much appreciated. And if you're new to the channel, feel free to subscribe to keep up with all the content. And any thoughts and such, I would love to hear down in the comments as always. And until next time, I look forward to seeing you all, and do take care.